Welcome back to the Scotti-BYTE channel, and this is Scott. So today I want to discuss user client computing, and I really need more subscribers. So I've heard that if you have kitty videos that you get a lot more subscribers. So Pebbles is here to try to promote the channel, and let's hope and see whether that happens. So apparently Pebbles became dismayed with the current state of user client computing, and she decided to depart stage left. So whether you're on Windows, Mac, Linux, Android, or iOS, your choice of applications has become more focused than in the past, and it really means that you have fewer applications that are doing more things. So the most important end user applications are now email and your web browser. And interestingly enough, a lot of people use their email through a web browser, and so sometimes it boils down to really just your web browser. The majority of applications then are either self-hosted or they're offered in the cloud, and so they're running on remote systems and you're interfacing with them through your web browser. So somewhere along the lines, we stopped using client-server applications, and software as a service applications, or SaaS, have become increasingly popular as becoming the predominant way to make revenue in the computing industry. So what about desktop operating systems? Well, most end users prefer Windows or macOS on the desktop, and that's primarily because of the end user experience, which is kind of ironic, as we'll see later. So the location, appearance, and interaction with elements such as the desktop, file manager, and menu bars strongly influence the experience really with any operating system. So legacy interface expectations drive industry not to make changes. And applications like Microsoft Office and various Adobe products are the other primary drivers to help prevent change in the desktop operating system. And most notably, people aren't moving to Linux, primarily not because they like Mac OS or Windows more, but mostly because those core applications do not have equivalent or they do have equivalent alternatives in Linux, but they don't have the exact program available in Linux. So most other desktop applications have a web presence that is either self-hosted or it's hosted in the public cloud. So despite technology advances, the fundamental core of Microsoft Windows really hasn't changed much since the 1990s, because desktop computing revenue has flattened. So are desktop computers becoming irrelevant, or are they actually irrelevant? Well, the sales of desktop computers have clearly fallen. And when I say desktop computers, I'm talking about those typical full towers or mid-tower type systems that have been predominant since the 1980s. So mobile computing has risen, and mobile computing, I'm going to say, are basically tablets, phones, and really even laptop computers, although arguably laptop computers give you a desktop environment or maybe even a hybrid environment. So the virtual workplace is defined by laptops with docking stations, either accessing cloud services or acting as thin clients, and that's what companies have been moving to. So desktop computers still have a relevant use case for gaming or for high-end CAD/CAM types of applications. And future desktops are evolving from a tower configuration to a mini PC form factor, and a lot of times they're even integrated into the monitor themselves. So desktop computers usually have a viable lifetime of 3 to 5 years, and they're usually retired with the same operating system version that they are purchased or delivered with. So what does the IT industry care about specifically? Well, the IT industry knows that end users value their user interface experience, and they also value their data. Microsoft is compelled to continue to provide a refreshed Windows despite the lack of increased revenue. And Microsoft makes up for this by making subtle visual changes while internally increasing the telemetry by leveraging AI models to sell how you use your computer and to sell your usage patterns and make money through selling that data. So Microsoft, Amazon, Oracle, and others develop and advance cloud strategies to either sell SaaS software or to sell data that is mined from the usage of your computer and how you use that computing device on a daily basis. So self-hosted infrastructure and services, which we discuss on the Scotti-BYTE channel all the time, allow you to take control of your data and increase your privacy, which is really how it should be. After all, it's your data, and who should control it? I would say that you should control your data. So Google and Microsoft have great free services, and I'll be the first to admit that I use a lot of those free services, but just realize that those free services come at the price of your willingness to expose how you use your computer, and this is valuable marketing data that is sold at a profit. So what does the user care about? Well, you care about a consistent end user interface that works the way that you do with no training for new versions of the operating system. And you care that your legacy applications work as new versions of the operating system are released. And that's really tough because a lot of times those legacy applications can get really old. I had a friend of mine mention that he still has applications that date back 20 years and are still on CDs and DVDs that he expects to be able to install in every new version of Windows. And his rationale and reasoning is that he has significant financial investment in those applications. So you care that you can migrate your data, your applications, and your customizations to new computers seamlessly. You care that your data is stored securely, and you care that your data is at least at a minimum under your control. So you care that access to your data is never disrupted. And that's sort of a tough situation nowadays because keep in mind that if your data is stored in the cloud, you're restricted by the availability of that cloud service. And when that cloud service is disrupted, so is your ability to work. So you care that loss of your computing device never results in loss of your data. So in that sense, the use of a cloud service is really great because it stores your data in the cloud. And whether that's public cloud or self-hosted private cloud, if you lose your desktop computer and the majority of your data is not stored on that personal device, but instead stored in a cloud service with a great backup strategy, then that will guarantee or at least improve your likelihood of not losing any data. So where is end user computing failing? So Windows and macOS fail to provide transparency and complete control over the information that is shared with them. And Windows 11 has been increasingly removing options to customize the user interface. And one thing I can think of right offhand is you used to be able to move the Windows taskbar from the bottom of the screen to the left of the screen, to the right of the screen, or the top of the screen. And now with Windows 11, it's locked to the bottom of the screen, at least with the latest version. And Windows 11 has embedded certain user controls much more deeply in the user interface, making them hard to find, with the idea that the most commonly controlled user functions should be at the top level of the operating system where they're accessible, and the less often used functions should be embedded where they don't confuse the average user. But most people find those sorts of changes frustrating and would like to revert back to the time when Windows worked the way that Windows worked. So migrating to a newer hardware device is not completely transparent, and it actually requires advanced user knowledge. If user data in general is migrated to a new system, but application customizations and security authorizations are lost, the resulting system becomes unusable from the end user perspective. And so I went out and I decided to tell you about a recent use case that I had. So my wife and I recently replaced our Android phones, and this is going to be a good example to see how this happens or can happen in any operating system, mobile or desktop. So the Android migration program effectively and efficiently moved all of our pictures, our text messages, phone logs, contacts, calendaring information, and applications to the new device, and much of that was due to the fact that that data was stored in the cloud. So none of the Android application settings data was migrated, resulting in over 50 of my applications losing the server names that they were talking to, many of which were either in the public cloud, but many of which were on my local cloud services that I had established. And they lost the login information, and they lost some application user interface settings that I had set up, and they also lost authentication tokens. So I had to re-enter all of this information for all 50 of these applications, and since I use Yubico hardware keys for hardware key authentication to both my public cloud apps and my self-hosted applications, I needed to re-authenticate with the hardware key in addition to providing all the aforementioned information. So my wife and I had many, or rather my wife actually, I'm not really a gamer either at the desktop or on Android devices, and my wife had many Android games that she stored data in the cloud, but she had many games that stored game progress on the device itself. And locally stored game data had no way to be migrated with the provided Android migration process, even though both phones were connected with the USB cable and the migration was run. Yes, you got the application on the new device, but when she would go fire up that particular game, she was back at level 1 instead of being at level 897 after years of progress. So our old Android devices were Android 10, and navigation was performed with the 3-button interface with the on-screen navigation methodology. And the new Android phones were Android 13, and navigation was defaulted to swipe navigation despite migrating from a device that used button navigation. And yes, we eventually located the option where you could change from swipe navigation or gesture navigation back to the 3-button on-screen controls. But just like when changes were made from the typical Windows interface of regular menu items from the start menu, and then for a while Microsoft headed off to the Metro Tile interface, people kind of balked at that major change and they eventually gave a way to go to either interface. And now today, that interface is more of a hybrid interface. So in summary, user-client computing focuses on the device that you use to connect with and use of applications. And the choice of an end-user computing device and operating system is no longer as important as it was, because most applications are running either in the public or private cloud. But that being said, there's still some significant holdouts, such as Microsoft Office and also the Adobe applications, as I'd mentioned earlier on. So most computing devices are replaced rather than upgraded, and the upgrade process is now not very smooth, or not as smooth as we'd like it to be. And notably, my pointing out the fact that yes, they may have migrated the applications, they may have migrated some of the user data, but they might not have migrated either the customizations you've made in an application. Think about things like Microsoft Word, where maybe you've changed up your toolbars or you've changed up templates that you use. And then the other thing is obviously authentication for those both publicly cloud-based and locally cloud-based applications. And that authentication data becomes a significant part of the configuration of the device. So the user environment consists of the client device, the operating system, the application, the user data and customizations, and apparently also the authentication. So we need to do better in recognizing the end user environment customizations and experience and preserving that when migrating to a new client computer device. Anyway, that's it for today. Please subscribe and like to the channel, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, and we'll see you next time.